Hey guys, this is Neo with my opinion on the balance tweaks that Blizzard got us here on March 2nd of 2023, only 2 weeks after the patch 1.35 hit us. Just in case you haven't seen the previous video where we go through the changes real quick, Immolation gets addressed, Mirror Image and Anti-Magic Shell. For Immolation, the damage has been reduced from 8, 12 and 18 to 6.5, 10 and 16 per tick, which is half a second, so the damage per second is twice from this. The mana cost has been increased per second from 6 to 8, but it doesn't cost any mana anymore to activate it when it was previously 20 mana. Mirror Image does a little bit more damage now, and Anti-Magic Shell is absorbing more damage than before. So let's talk Immolation, because Immolation has, of course, been the big and dominant spell of patch 1.35. That's been the biggest change. We see a lot more Demon Hunter first that is the standard pick right now in many matchups because of Immolation, because it enables you to creep very fast and also do damage to the economy and early game units of your opponent, whether it's peasants, footmen, ghouls, whatever. It's just very good in the early stages of a game. It's also very good for creeping. We've seen creep routes where you get level 3 after 3 minutes 25 or something, which is absurd. And very good and very powerful, because Night Elves also figured out mana management quite a bit with an additional Moonwell, for example, to have more mana, to use more Immolation, to creep even faster. And in general, I like this. A new flavor for the early game is really good to have. A second option next to a Keeper of the Grove is something we want. We want to start a game, we want to speculate. Is he going Keeper? Is he going Demon? But at the moment, we don't really have to speculate. It's just Demon Hunter, because he's that strong and that fast, and maybe a bit too much. We've seen similar changes, or we go through similar phases with Orc that can decide between Farsi and Blade Master. We've been in a time where Undead can choose between Cryptlord DK and Lich. So in general, having options for first heroes is really damn good. But no one can deny that Immolation was too oppressive, too good. Even though it hasn't been used in a long time, or basically ever, with small adjustments in like 2014 for Human Echo Harass, this is too good of a spell. No one can catch up. And you have 2 choices to play it with creeping or harassing. So in general, addressing Immolation is a good thing. And it's the right thing to do as well. What does this mean? This means that... Oh, nope. With the Immolation mana cost removed, it rewards more precise Immolation play. So you can toggle it on and off without investing any additional mana to the normal, regular, constant cost of Immolation, when now it is 20 and you have to make a decision. Will I leave Immolation on? Or will I turn it off? What's more efficient? Now, when you're close to a creep or an opponent, you just toggle. As this graph shows you, for the first 10 seconds after the Immolation activation, now Immolation is cheaper compared to before, even though the old Immolation is obviously more powerful throughout the entire time. So I like that to get rid of the activation cost, because it rewards precise play. And it does require more micro. It will maybe even be a bit annoying to toggle it on and off to be as efficient as possible. But this is how it's supposed to be. If you're paying attention to detail, the game should reward you for it without feeling like work. And that's a good thing. So these are the 2 main changes to Immolation. So let's address one thing first, and that is damage. Because the way a Demon Hunter is played at the moment is you build him, you skill Immolation, you creep a bit. Or you creep a lot. You creep to level 3 as fast as you can possibly go for, but then you don't go into Immolation level 2 to continue playing that build, but you rather switch it up with Mana Burn 2 into Evasion or just use the Book of Retraining. And that is because Immolation 2 and 3 is really underwhelming. Obviously, in the beginning of a game, there's a lot of low HP units, and you creep spots with low HP creeps. So having Immolation in general is a good thing, but it doesn't scale well enough that the higher tier units with more HP in general, and the higher level creep camps with also more HP can be crept at a reasonable time. So that's why you go into Mana Burn, because the spells of your opponent are getting stronger over time, and then getting rid of their mana is more important, quite obviously. So the problem with Immolation is not the spell as a whole, but the problem with Immolation is the strength at level 1. And you being so much faster than your opponent in reaching the higher levels. This change, though, is addressing Immolation as a whole. As you can see, level 2 and 3 gets nerfed as well by 2 damage points per tick, respectively. This is not needed. Especially when it goes hand in hand with more expensive Immolation in fights, for example, where you could use Immolation as a burst. So while I like the initial damage reduction by 1.5, I think this could already be too strong. I'd like to see it at 7.5 instead of 6.5, and I would not change level 2 and 3. The mana cost increase, going hand in hand with no activation cost, is fine with me. It is quite a bit. That is, of course, 1/3 of the mana cost per second on top of what we currently have. But yeah, you need to be sharper, more precise. What this also means is, because it does less damage, you need to spend more time at a creep spot. Because you do less damage, obviously. The creeps survive longer and they hit you a couple times more. So now you get a little bit of a trade-off that you have more mana for if you use it for 10 seconds, but you get hit more often. This requires a little bit of micromanagement, of course. So maybe you don't want your Demon Hunter to be attacked. And in general, it takes more time to creep, which is a good thing. So it's really hard to make an estimation where we'll end up with the new Immolation. Softening the strength early game, I think this is accomplished with that. And this is what we need. But yeah, level 2 and 3 still need some help, maybe even a buff instead of a nerf. So, right direction, a little bit too strong here. And here about this activation thing, I'm really curious. This could lead to this like spamability of Immolation. There's currently a bug where if you press down the Immolation key, you constantly do damage, but only every few ticks your mana gets drained. So this has to be addressed at some point. I would like to see a little cooldown on Immolation activation. Might just be a second. So you can't just spam it and press the button. Something has to be done with it. Cooldown for activation, cooldown after deactivation. Just a little something to stop the spam ability. Also, you could posture up. Let's imagine a DK Ghoul army is facing a Demon Hunter. You could just fake Immolation and then the DK and Ghouls have to back off. You will be buying an immense amount of time with basically no cost. So either you do this and implement a little cooldown, or you just lower the activation cost to 5 or 10, or maybe activating costs 1 tick of then 8. Or you make it 7 for the mana cost and have activation of 7 as well. Something needs to be done here. It's a little rough around the edges, but in general the right direction. Which is not the case for the mirror image. Because Blizzard wanted the illusions to do damage, and that was an interesting change with a new flavor, which is basically what they did with the Demon Hunter, give a useless spell meaning. As we all know that Windwalk and Crit is really good, Mirror Image was essentially only used to get out of Entangle against the Keeper, which is not played that often anymore. But we all were of the opinion that if the mirror images do damage, you want to kill them, and then you want a reward for killing them, as that is the norm of a game. You invest something, you want a reward. After a few weeks of mirror image, in melee, in one-on-one, they're not used. The damage is laughable on these levels and with the items that we have in competitive Warcraft. And getting rid of them is still relatively easy with the spell, and they give an absurd amount of XP. Especially when you're low and you use mirror image, your images are also low HP. It makes it even easier to kill them. So while the damage is also a problem, the main issue with mirror image is the XP. And that must be addressed. Like, I don't think the 5% will do too much or lead to anything. The XP is what prevents everyone from playing mirror image. The amount of XP. I think it's still good that they give XP in general, but it needs to be reduced. The number one thing about mirror image is that the XP needs to be reduced rather drastically. So I'd love to see that instead of a damage boost, which is nice and goes hand in hand, and a little bit on top, can't necessarily hurt. But yeah, it's the wrong thing to do with mirror image. I'm sorry. Another change that I don't get at all is the anti-magic shell. Buffing it from, like, you all know in patch 1.35, they changed it so mirror image can be dispelled now by pretty much everything but destroyers. This will absorb 420 damage. That is a lot. That is 2 priest dispels. This is an entire purge. This is 2 claps and a dispel. So when we just go from mana trading, you invest 75 mana from your Banshee to block 225 damage or mana of a human. That's too much. I think anti-magic is in a solid spot. It blocks quite a bit with the 300. Could maybe be boosted a bit for some breaking points. But I don't see any breaking points here. This is really weird. Like 420 spell damage. I don't see a breaking point at all. It does survive a purge now, but nobody will play Banshees against Orc, really. I don't understand this. 420 is a little bit of a meme thingy. If the reason here is, hey, we nerfed undead so much, let's give them something. The Banshee is not the right unit. The Banshee is already pretty cool. If you want to give undead something new to toy with, use the Necros. Because the thing about the Banshee is, it's a pretty defensive unit, right? Curse is a defensive debuff. Anti-magic shell is a defensive spell. Only possession is offensive. Offensive, aggressive, you know what I mean. That's not so fun to play with. If you want to address something, use the Necro, because skeletons can be used offensively, Frenzy can be used offensively, and Cripple can help you with, like, chasing and stuff. That'd be something cool. The problem with undead casters, of course, is that they are getting nerfed, or they were nerfed, because of the nerfs to stat use, because mana regeneration for undead is lower. So this is just wrong. 420 is absurd. That's so much damage. I don't get it. Just don't do it. Banshee seem to be in a good spot currently. Address Necros. That's my advice. Apart from that, really cool they're doing something and addressing some of the most talked about things in Immolation and Mirror Image. There's definitely still a lot to do and a lot of ideas to toy with. Item drops, for example, Wand of Mana Stealing, pretty strong. Mana Potions and Mana Stones, really good. We could even that out for sure. That would be the easiest things. Yeah. That's my initial feedback on what they do. I think Remo and Carson will also present their initial views. So, too long, didn't listen. Addressing Immolation is right on level 1. It's not too strong on level 2 and 3 at all. It needs a little cooldown to not have it, like, to reduce the spammability. Maybe find a middle ground between no activation cost and the 20 activation cost as well. Yeah, just so Night Elves won't spam it, because that is ridiculous and, to be honest, rather stupid. Address the Mirror Image XP and rather address the Necros instead of the Banshees. That's me with my feedback on the patch. Hopefully it hits us soon and will be addressed down the road. Thank you for watching. See you soon.